So let's look at the first headline over here. It says, quantum computers are currently only theory.
Yeah. I mean, that's a headline you might read because it's, we are talking about it, but it's 15 years from now that something is going to happen. But that's not the case. I mean, right now, as we're sitting here, you can actually go and access a quantum computer, and there's several ones that are in action. They are not extremely brilliant. They don't have a lot of qubits. But still, they are at the level where you can begin to experiment with them.
Well, let's zoom out a little bit. What exactly is quantum computing?
Well,
it sounds super fancy.
Yeah,
complicated.
Yeah, it sounds fancy. I think the key thing is that at some point, this guy, Richard Feynman, and maybe you've seen the movie Oppenheimer. Anyone seen Oppenheimer, by the way? Okay, that's great. That's great. And actually, there's a guy, when this explodes, he's sitting in a car. If you remember that scene, that's Richard Feynman. And he's a fantastic, almost like a guru. He was driving nice sports cars and caring about his dress and stuff. And then he was a genius at the same time. It was pretty nice. And the problem was that when you try to carve out what is going on in nature, it turns out that the nature is behaving in a quantum way. And he was like, okay, we are simply not able to calculate this stuff. So for instance, if you have something like photosynthesis, maybe you know how it works. Is there anyone that knows how photosynthesis works? Get an idea, yeah? So the idea is naturally that you have, the green stuff, you have the chlorophyll, and then you have the energy coming down from the sun, and then this is actually able to convert this into energy while it basically consumes carbon dioxide, and it produces oxygen. That's what we have been taught, all of us. And that's right. However, on a molecular level, what's going on that level? We simply don't know. It's way, way too complicated. The only molecules we're able to do a simulation of are hydrogen. And maybe if you remember physics, this is the number one. It has only one electron. I mean, that's not very complicated, but that's the only one we can simulate. If we could simulate everything that has to do with carbon, we could, for instance, find out how is photosynthesis really going on, and then I could place some photosynthesis maybe in my clothing. And then my clothing would produce energy when I was walking. That would be pretty nice, I think. So Feynman got this idea that we could build this quantum computer, and then basically the tech nerds, they started building a quantum computer. And it turned out to be extremely difficult, because what they needed to do was to use two principles. And maybe you remember Einstein. I hope you know this guy, at least from records. And he had this idea about the relativity theory. This was great stuff. It was nice. But he didn't really want to take it to the next level. So along came another guy. It was a guy called Niels Bohr, who happens to be a Danish guy, by the way. And he was saying, wait a minute, if this is true, then a lot of other stuff is true. Then when you have, for instance, an emission of a photon, you wouldn't know how that would behave. You wouldn't even know if it's a wave or a particle. And Einstein was saying, come on, I mean, of course you know. It's only a matter of the theory you put up, then you know it's this or this. And Niels Bohr kept on saying, no, it's basically statistics. And then Einstein famously said, well, God doesn't play dice. And then he set up a lot of experiments where he was going to prove that, of course, God is not playing dice. And actually, Einstein spent the rest of his life trying to unprove the theory of Niels Bohr. That actually, because he then invited a lot of great guys from Germany, England, and all over to something called the Copenhagen School. And then they invented quantum mechanics. Heisenberg, for instance, was a great part of that. And what that is, you are using the fact that you have superposition. So when I was doing my coding, I'm a computer scientist by trade, it was 0 and 1s. Basically it's NP 0 and 1, and that's all. But what we can do with quantum computers, that is that they can be in a superposition. So this means that you can see this like a ball, and you have a 0 on top and 1 in the bottom. And while it's not measured, and that's where Einstein got crazy, while you're not measuring it, it's actually in all sorts of positions. And immediately when you measured it, it's either a 1 or 0. It's that's weird. I mean, it simply can't be true. There was an experiment, a thought experiment called the Schrödinger's cat, where they were using this fact and to find out whether the cat is actually dead or alive, because they had this injection of poison that was based on on, you know, and on the radiation coming out, which would happen at some statistic moment. Nobody knew when. So if you have a box with a cat in it, you wouldn't know whether the cat is dead or alive. And according to the theory, it's both. It's both dead and alive. But immediately when you measure, you know, you open the box, you can see whether it's dead or alive. So, but this was a big issue. So the superposition is one. And if we can put, you know, this, I would call it an item into a superposition, then we can use the fact that it can be more than 0 and 1. It can be a lot of stuff. And that's when we can calculate, and we can calculate in parallel. So this means if we have 2 qubits, then we can calculate all the different combinations in parallel. If we have 3 in parallel, this means that it goes, you know, 2 to the power of the number of qubits. And if you remember the good old exponential stuff, maybe some do, otherwise you can pick up your iPhone and then say 2 in the power of. So if they take 2 in the power of, let's just say 60, that's a hell of a lot of stuff. And that's what we do. And then someone will say, but how do we connect them? And that's also easy, and that's also something that makes Einstein go weird, because we connect them by entanglement. So entanglement is that what they were proving at the time, and this was actually one of the experiments where Einstein failed again, but that was, okay, but it can't be 2 things at the same time. And Niels Bohr was saying, of course it can. So then Niels Bohr said, okay, now I take this photon and then I just split it down the middle, and then it ejects as a twin, and then I can measure the position on one and the speed on the other. I have solved it, he said to Niels Bohr. And then they tried to do it, and then what happened was that when it was out on this and they were trying to measure the speed, then they couldn't measure the position. It just disappeared. And even if they were further apart than the speed of light, it was still the case. So it's a little bit weird, but that's the way you connect them. And when you then can connect them, then you can do calculations, but only of certain sorts.
Well, I mean, getting back to the original headline, which is quantum computers are currently only theory, you're speaking in a very sort of theoretical Niels Bohr.
Yeah, let me go to the computing. So right now, IBM has a program which is named after a lot of birds. It's normally, you know, eagles and birds that are eating other birds, basically. That has been the case so far. And now they have just released, just before Christmas, the biggest of the birds, which is a condor. So they came from eagle and now to condor with more than 1,000 qubits. The problem is, this measurement stuff I told you about before with the superposition, immediately when somebody is measuring it, and that means that it could just be a lift on an elevator going on, then suddenly it goes to a 1 and a 0, and then everything is lost. That's a big problem. But it works to some degree. It has more than 1,000 qubits, and of those, maybe 4 logical qubits. So 4 of them are really working. And the next thing they do now, they are going to switch. So they are going to switch from all these birds eating other birds to birds that are eating fish instead. I don't know why. So they are sort of coming from. Yeah, that's the next version. So they're coming. They're releasing the condor and then the heron. So the heron is a very long, thin bird that is eating fish and stuff like this. And that's where they're going now. So now they are going to connect a lot of smaller quantum computers using entanglement of some nature. And in that way, they hope they can create a computer that really can you know, take the heat. So and at the same time, you have Google doing the same. They are making these big quantum computers. Maybe you have seen one. There's some good. I think it was on HBO Max or Disney or something. There's a pretty good series where you see this quantum computer hanging like a big lamp. You know, it's very, very big. And you think, oh, that's a huge quantum computer. But in fact, that's just an enormous fridge, because a quantum computer is just a small chip in the very end. And this whole thing is there to cool it, and then it's hanging in a way where it shouldn't be disturbed. Right. So that's how it looks. But there's also a quantum computer where they use photons. They basically use light to make a quantum computer. So
really what you're saying is we've moved beyond theory. There are some applications.
Yeah, you can go on. I would encourage all of you to maybe download Qiskit, which is one of the frameworks you can use to program a quantum computer.
Great. So I think we can debunk this. All right, let's forget this headline. I hate it. Get rid of it.
Nice.
So dramatic. Now, you mentioned Google earlier.
Yeah.
Our next headline over here comes from Andrew Yang. It says, Google achieving quantum computing is a huge deal. It means, among many other things, that no code is uncrackable.
Yeah.
Sounds scary. What does this mean for cryptography, security, safety?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's wrong. By the way, I mean, it doesn't mean that to achieve quantum supremacy doesn't mean that no code is unbreakable. I mean, that's not right. But it's right that when you are able to do this, quantum supremacy basically means that a quantum computer can do the same calculation a lot faster. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. So it's like when you are able to break different and we will have that as a question, I think, as well. But when you have a certain calculation, what a quantum computer can do within what it's good at, it will normally be a calculation that will take maybe for a classic computer, let's say 70 million years, and then that can be done in maybe 10 minutes. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about, and that was also what they were into. So they said, we have just done this calculation. It takes 100,000 years to do it with a classic computer. Right. And that's not your laptop, by the way. I mean, we're talking about a supercomputer. But the problem was that then they tried to look into it, and IBM found a way to do it much faster. So instead of these 100,000 years, it was actually only a couple of days. And then some Chinese guys, they found a way to do it in a few minutes. And then it was sort of, forget about it. So.
Why does that mean that no code is uncrackable? Like, surely with a very complex code or something that's very seriously encrypted, it means that with quantum computing, we can crack that very easily.
The problem is, I mean, when you do into cryptography, and you have most likely a mobile phone, is my guess, and when you have the transmission that is going in, there will be a crypto protection, a crypto algorithm. This will most likely be something called an ISA. And the ISA is basically built on a very simple thing, which is, okay, I have a key, and that key is made out of two numbers, So you're taking these two numbers, and then you multiply them, and then you get a huge number. And then in order to get back to where you came from, you actually need to do, you can say, what is called sort of the hard code, the hard way, which is you just need to go experiment with one number after the other. And that takes a heck of a long time. But the problem is that since a quantum computer is able to do that exact calculation instantly, so instead of this is taking, I mean, in the case of crypto, for instance, an ISA 21024, which is quite normal, will take a classic computer about 2 million years to break. That's a little bit too long time for a hacker to wait. It's a little bit too long.
Yeah, they get hungry.
However, a quantum computer that has sufficient qubits can actually do this in less than 2 minutes. And that means this is also the algorithm that is used, for instance, for bitcoins. Anyone in the crypto business here? So it just opens them up and just changes them and locks them again. So very nice. And it's that goes for your health data as well. Most of what we are protecting now is protected by this way of protecting code, and that will be totally cracked and open. And the interesting thing, by the way, is that we're not talking about hacking. I mean, we're actually talking about creating the key. So we're just moving into your system, and you don't even know it. And then we can move out again.
So you're saying that this is this is just not correct?
This is both correct and not correct.
That's very quantum.
This one should just be debunked, because at the time it was just, they thought they had it, but they didn't.
Right.
So just forget about it. But actually now, they are beginning to be there, and one of the Chinese quantum computers is able to do a calculation now in minutes that takes 2 billion years to do with a classic computer. So this was wrong.
All right. So I think we can move on to the next one. Now, you talked a lot about China. So we have this one. Chinese researchers claim to have broken RSA with a quantum computer. Experts aren't so sure.
Yeah.
Tell me about this.
Yeah, and they were coming out with this because, as I just told you, it would be a problem if we were able to sort of crack open everything not everything, but about 50% of everything that is protected. That would be a problem. This is Shor's algorithm. So Feynman got this idea that we could make a quantum computer, and there's this other guy called Shor. He actually made an algorithm that was showing that we could do this prime calculation, because we're talking about prime numbers. I think I forgot to say that this is prime numbers that are multiplied. So the ability there was invented already before the quantum computer. There was Shor's algorithm. And then these guys were claiming that now they had made a quantum computer that could actually do this. So hell broke loose, and I know, for instance, the head of the Niels Bohr Institute in Denmark, he was called up by the Minister of Defense, and saying, what the hell is this? So a lot of people, they went into finding whether this was true or not. And very quickly they found out this was bullshit. First of all, they were actually not talking about Shor, they were talking about Schnorr, which is also an algorithm, but not at all the same. And if you use that, it will not work. So this is completely bullshit, but what is right is that when it's, and I'm saying when it happens, because what you need is about 4,000 logical qubits. And when that is happening, then hell breaks loose. That's why Joe Biden, being an older man as he is, he actually has made a memorandum where all data from all important public institutions in the States, they have to have a post-quantum cryptography and a plan for how they do it. Here in Europe, we're not doing anything. We're just waiting. And I have to tell you that 50%, I mean, we have all the investments that are done in quantum computing, and then we add them on top of each other. Then we reach the exact same amount of money that the Chinese government is spending. They're spending half of the entire world's investments in quantum computing. And I'm not sure they're going to tell us when they have done it, actually. I mean, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But, you can just move in and move out. Nobody will see you.
All right, cool. I think
this was wrong.
Wrong, totally wrong. We can move on from this one. Quantum computers will replace classical computers. Now, we only have a couple of minutes, so if we could speed it up. Why?
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, this is not true either. So this is not the one solution to all the trouble we have. It's a solution to a certain amounts of problems we have where we need to do these deep calculations. For instance, to find new products, medical products, for instance. It could be to find a better routing, better logistics. It could be to better risk models in finance. All this kind of stuff it's able to do, but it's not able to do a lot of other stuff. In many cases, the classic computer will be better. But I just want to say that a lot of people are thinking we are not able to do that now, but we are, in fact.
Yeah.
Because what happened was that they tried to simulate a quantum computer, and they naturally were not able to do it. Then some Canadian guys, they got this idea, why don't we make a quantum computer that is only able to do one piece of quantum math? Something called QUBO. You can look it up if you want. But it can do QUBO, and QUBO is fantastic because that can optimize logistics, the traveling salesman. It can optimize risk models, and it can optimize grids. So if you want to put up windmills, or if you want to have different McDonald's spread in a good way, that's the problems it can solve. D-Wave was then made, and that's a quantum computer that actually works. And then Microsoft and Fujitsu, they were able to actually simulate that. So now, already now, you can go and you can improve your logistics. Any company that has transportation can take 10% at least out of the transportation they have. Anyone that makes grids, for instance, we did a project for a big mobile company spreading 5G. We could take 15% of the annual investments in 5G masts. And they are spending 300 million euro on it. So this is something a lot of people don't know because they are listening to the scientists that wants to do the hardware, but I don't care. I just want to use the software.
All right, I think we're ready.
So that's wrong.
Totally wrong. Let's move on. I hate it. Now, our last one, just very quickly. AI already uses as much energy as a small country. It's only the beginning.
Yeah, I think there was this idea about in Paris in 1880 that in Paris all the streets will be flooded with shit, horse shit. That was going to happen, 1 meter of horse shit. And this is because we as people, we are sort of just taking linear progression. But that's not the way it works. And the reason why this is on for this is that there's one thing quantum computers is good at. It is to solve the problem of training big neural networks. And as you know, generative AI is big neural networks. So what it does is it can do the same calculation, but it can do it 1,000 times with 1,000 times less energy. So basically, if you have 1 kilowatt today, you're going to 1 watt. And that's just the beginning, by the way. So, and by the way, while we're discussing this, I mean, just remember that the power we're using is used on something that is 40,000 times better than it was 10 years ago.
Right.
So it's not even the same we calculate. But it's just so you know, this is not going to happen. Yes, right now, you know, there's some issues with this, but it simply is going to disappear. So this is right. It's already a small country. That's right. That's like Bitcoin mining. That's actually much more than what Gen AI is using. But it's only the beginning. That's not true.
It's just the wrong way of looking at it.
Yeah, right? It is.
All right, forget this one. Done. All right. In the meantime, please give it up for Ben Dalager, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.